May 1943. The night sky over Germany trembles with the sound of approaching bombers. 19 Lancaster aircraft fly in tight formation, skimming just 60 feet above the water. Each carries a revolutionary weapon that seems to defy the laws of physics. This is the story of the bouncing bomb and Operation Chastise, the legendary Dambusters raid. A tale of brilliant engineering, extraordinary courage, and a mission that would change warfare forever. To understand this remarkable story, we must first understand the strategic situation in 1943. World War II had been raging for nearly 4 years. Britain and her allies were locked in a desperate struggle against Nazi Germany. The bombing campaign against Germany was intensifying. RAF Bomber Command conducted nightly raids against German industrial targets. But conventional bombing had significant limitations. Accuracy was poor, especially at night. Bombs often missed their targets by hundreds of yards. Even when bombs hit their targets, many structures proved resistant to damage. Bridges, factories, and especially dams were extremely difficult to destroy. Germany's industrial might depended heavily on its hydroelectric power system. The Ruhr Valley was the heart of German industry. Steel mills, armament factories, and chemical plants clustered in this region. These industries required massive amounts of water and electricity. Several large dams in the region provided both. The Muna Dam was the largest, holding back a reservoir containing over 100 million cubic meters of water. The Eder Dam was nearly as large, located to the east. The Sorpe Dam was a different type of construction, but equally important. British planners recognized that destroying these dams could cripple German industry. The flooding would devastate factories and infrastructure. The loss of water supply would halt production for months. The loss of hydroelectric power would compound the damage. But there was a problem. Dams are incredibly difficult to destroy. They are massive structures made of concrete and stone. The Muna Dam was 130 feet high and over 2,000 feet long. Its walls were up to 112 feet thick at the base. Conventional bombing from high altitude had virtually no chance of success. Bombs dropped from thousands of feet would likely miss the narrow dam wall entirely. Even a direct hit might not penetrate the massive structure. And the dams were protected by anti-aircraft guns and torpedo nets. Torpedo nets hung in the water upstream of the dam walls. These would catch any torpedo fired at the dam, rendering that approach useless. The problem seemed insoluble, until one man had an idea. Barnes Wallis was a brilliant aircraft designer and engineer. Born in 1887, he had already made significant contributions to British aviation. He had designed the geodetic construction method used in the Wellington bomber. This revolutionary design made aircraft lighter yet stronger. By 1942, Wallis was working at Vickers Aviation as chief designer. He became interested in the problem of destroying hardened targets. Wallis studied the physics of explosions and structural engineering. He realized that conventional bombing approaches were fundamentally flawed. Bombs exploded in air or on the surface, dissipating most of their energy. To destroy a massive structure like a dam, the explosion needed to occur underwater. Water is incompressible, so an underwater explosion creates enormous pressure. This pressure, focused against the dam wall, could crack the concrete. But how could you get a bomb to explode underwater against the dam wall? Dropping it from above wouldn't work. The torpedo nets prevented underwater approaches. Wallis pondered this problem for months. And then inspiration struck. The solution came from an unlikely source: skipping stones across water. Everyone has skipped stones as a child, watching them bounce across the water's surface. Wallis realized that a cylindrical bomb, spinning rapidly, could skip across water like a stone. It could bounce over the torpedo nets protecting the dams. Once past the nets, the bomb would sink against the dam wall. A hydrostatic fuse would detonate it at the correct depth, 30 feet down. The underwater explosion would create a shock wave that would shatter the concrete. It was a brilliant concept, but would it work in practice? Wallis began conducting experiments in late 1942. He started with small-scale models in his garden water tank. Using marbles and a catapult, he tested the bouncing principle. The marbles bounced across the water surface exactly as predicted. Encouraged, Wallis moved to larger-scale testing. He conducted tests at a ship testing tank using larger models. The physics held up. Cylindrical objects spinning backward would skip across water. The backspin was crucial. It prevented the bomb from diving underwater prematurely. As the bomb bounced, each impact slowed it down while the spin kept it stable. After several bounces, the bomb would lose momentum and sink. Wallis calculated that the bomb needed to be released at exactly the right speed and altitude. The aircraft would need to fly at exactly 240 miles per hour. The altitude needed to be precisely 60 feet above the water. The bomb needed to be spinning backward at 500 revolutions per minute, and it needed to be released at exactly the right distance from the dam. These tolerances were incredibly tight for a combat operation. But Wallis believed it could be done. Now he needed to convince the military. Wallis faced considerable skepticism from military officials. His idea seemed too fantastical, too much like science fiction. He presented his concept to various committees and officials throughout late 1942. Many dismissed it as impractical or impossible. But Wallis was persistent. He refined his calculations and conducted more tests. He created detailed technical drawings and reports. Gradually, he began to win supporters. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris, head of Bomber Command, was initially skeptical, but he agreed to allow further development and testing. In February 1943, Wallis received approval to proceed. He had just 3 months to develop a working weapon. The bombing raid was scheduled for May, when reservoir levels would be at their highest. This created enormous time pressure. Every day counted. Wallis and his team worked around the clock to design the bomb. The final design was designated Upkeep, though it became known as the bouncing bomb. It was cylindrical in shape like a large barrel or drum. The bomb measured 60 inches long and 50 inches in diameter. It weighed 9,600 pounds with over 6,000 pounds of explosive. The explosive was Torpex, a powerful mixture more effective than TNT. The bomb casing was made of thick steel to withstand the impacts of bouncing. A hydrostatic fuse would trigger detonation at 30 feet depth. The bomb would be mounted in special cradles under a modified Lancaster bomber. Before release, a hydraulic motor would spin the bomb backward to 500 RPM. This backspin was essential for the bouncing effect to work. Full-scale testing began in April 1943. Wallis and his team conducted tests at Reculver on the Kent coast. A modified Wellington bomber dropped test versions of the bomb. The early tests were mixed. Some bombs bounced as predicted. Others broke apart on impact or behaved erratically. Wallis made continuous adjustments to the design and release parameters. By late April, the bouncing bomb was working reliably. Test bombs skipped across the water, bounced over obstacles, and sank as designed. The weapon was ready. Now they needed pilots brave enough to use it. While Wallis developed the bomb, the RAF prepared the aircrew. A special squadron was formed specifically for this mission. No. 617 Squadron was created in March 1943. Its commander was Wing Commander Guy Gibson. Gibson was just 24 years old but already a veteran bomber pilot. He had completed over 170 combat missions. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Order and Distinguished Flying Cross. Gibson was known for his skill, courage, and leadership. He was given the task of selecting and training crews for the special mission. Gibson handpicked the best pilots, navigators, bomb aimers, and gunners from across Bomber Command. Each Lancaster crew consisted of 7 men. The pilot commanded the aircraft and flew the mission. The flight engineer managed the aircraft's systems and engines. The navigator plotted the course and ensured they reached the target. The bomb aimer released the weapon at the precise moment. The wireless operator maintained radio communication. The front gunner and rear gunner defended against enemy fighters. Each man was essential to the mission's success. 617 Squadron assembled at RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire. The air crews were not told what their mission would be. They knew only that they were training for something special and extremely dangerous. The training was unlike anything they had experienced before. They practiced low-level flying over water day and night. Flying at 60 feet altitude required extraordinary skill and nerve. At that height, there was no margin for error. A slight miscalculation would send the aircraft crashing into the water. The pilots practiced over reservoirs and lakes across England. They learned to judge altitude precisely by sight alone. A special device was developed to help maintain the correct height. 2 spotlights were mounted under the aircraft, angled to converge at 60 feet. When the 2 light spots on the water merged into one, the aircraft was at the correct altitude. This simple but effective system worked even in darkness. Determining the correct release point was another challenge. The bomb needed to be dropped at exactly 425 yards from the dam. A simple but ingenious aiming device was created. 2 nails were positioned to form a crude sight in the bomb aimer's position. When the towers at each end of the dam lined up with the nails, the bomb was released. The crews practiced these procedures repeatedly, flying at precise altitude and speed, while navigating at low level at night, then approaching the target from the correct angle and releasing at the exact moment, all while under enemy fire and maintaining formation with other aircraft. The complexity and danger of the mission was extraordinary. In early May 1943, the crews were finally briefed on their target. They learned they would be attacking the dams in the Ruhr Valley. The primary targets were the Muna and Eder dams. The secondary target was the Sorpe Dam. Gibson explained the bouncing bomb concept to his crews. Many were skeptical, but they trusted their commander and the scientists. The mission was scheduled for the night of May 16 to 17, 1943. Weather conditions needed to be right. A full moon for visibility, calm winds for accuracy. On May 16th, final preparations were made. 19 Lancaster bombers were prepared for the mission. Each aircraft was modified to carry the upkeep bomb. The bomb bay doors had been removed to accommodate the large cylindrical weapon. The hydraulic motor that would spin the bomb was installed and tested. The spotlights for altitude measurement were fitted and aligned. Each aircraft was fueled and armed. The crews went through their pre-flight checks one last time. As evening approached, the airmen gathered for final briefings. They studied maps and photographs of the target areas. They reviewed the route, timing, and procedures. They knew the risks. Low-level flying was dangerous. German anti-aircraft defenses would be fierce. Night fighters might intercept them. Many of them might not return, but they were ready. At 9:30 p.m. on May 16th, the first wave of bombers took off. Gibson led the first formation of 9 aircraft toward the Muna Dam. A second wave of 5 aircraft would attack the Sorpe Dam. A third wave of 5 aircraft served as reserves to attack remaining targets. The Lancasters flew low across the English countryside. They crossed the North Sea at wave-top height to avoid radar detection. The moon illuminated their path across the dark water. As they approached the Dutch coast, they encountered flak. German anti-aircraft guns opened fire on the low-flying bombers. Tracer rounds streaked through the darkness. One Lancaster was hit and crashed, killing all aboard. The other aircraft pressed on, flying so low they had to climb to avoid church steeples. They navigated by dead reckoning and visual landmarks. Lakes, rivers, and towns passed beneath them in the moonlight. Another aircraft struck power lines and crashed. The remaining bombers continued toward their targets. Gibson's formation reached the Muna Dam at 12:28 a.m. The massive structure loomed before them in the moonlight. The reservoir shimmered calm and dark. German anti-aircraft guns on the dam opened fire immediately. Flak filled the air, creating a curtain of fire the bombers had to penetrate. Gibson made the first attack run. He flew across the reservoir toward the dam, maintaining exactly 60 feet altitude. His flight engineer called out the speed, 240 miles per hour. The bomb aimer lined up the target using the crude nail sight. Flak burst around the aircraft, fragments rattling against the fuselage. At the precise moment, the bomb aimer released the upkeep weapon. The spinning bomb dropped away from the aircraft. It hit the water and bounced exactly as Wallis had predicted. Once, twice, 3 times it skipped across the reservoir surface. The bomb cleared the torpedo nets and struck the dam wall. It sank and detonated 30 feet down. A massive column of water erupted skyward, hundreds of feet high. The explosion sent shock waves through the massive concrete structure. But when the water subsided, the dam still stood. Gibson circled around for another aircraft to make its run. The second Lancaster, piloted by Flight Lieutenant Hopgood, began its approach. The German gunners now knew exactly where to aim. Flak was even more intense on this second run. Hopgood's aircraft was hit multiple times as it raced toward the dam. The plane was on fire, trailing smoke and flames. But Hopgood pressed on, determined to release his bomb. The bomb aimer released the weapon, but the aircraft was too low and too late. The bomb bounced over the dam and exploded on the power station below. Hopgood's burning Lancaster climbed away from the dam. The crew bailed out, but only 3 survived. Hopgood and 3 others died in the crash. The third aircraft, flown by Flight Lieutenant Martin, made its approach. Gibson flew alongside to draw fire away from the attacking bomber. It was an incredibly brave act, deliberately attracting enemy fire. Martin's bomb was released perfectly. It bounced across the water, cleared the nets, and struck the dam. Another massive explosion shook the structure. Again, the dam held, though cracks were beginning to appear. Squadron Leader Young made the 4th attack. His bomb also struck the dam wall and exploded perfectly. The cumulative damage was mounting, but the dam still held. Flight Lieutenant Maltby prepared for the fifth attack. The German gunners were now firing with desperate intensity. They knew what the bombers were trying to achieve. Maltby's Lancaster raced toward the dam through the wall of flak. The bomb was released at the perfect moment. It bounced across the water and struck the dam wall. The explosion was tremendous, larger than the previous ones. And then, in the moonlight, the observers saw something incredible. The Muna Dam was breaking. A crack appeared in the massive concrete wall. Water began pouring through, first as a trickle, then as a torrent. The crack widened as the pressure of 100 million cubic meters of water forced it open. Within minutes, a huge section of the dam wall collapsed. A wall of water 30 feet high roared through the breach. The reservoir emptied in a catastrophic flood. Gibson circled overhead, watching the destruction unfold. He radioed back to base with the code word "nigger." This indicated the Muna Dam had been breached successfully. The name was that of Gibson's black Labrador, which had been killed the day before the raid. Gibson now led the remaining aircraft to the secondary target, the Eder Dam. The Eder Dam was located in more difficult terrain. The reservoir was surrounded by hills and forests. The approach required flying through a narrow valley, then making a sharp turn. It was an extremely challenging flying maneuver even in daylight. At night it was nearly suicidal. The aircraft had to descend into the valley, weave between hills, then turn sharply toward the dam, all while maintaining exactly 60 feet altitude and 240 miles per hour. Flight Lieutenant Shannon made the first attempt. He flew into the valley but could not line up properly on the first run. He had to climb away without releasing his bomb. He tried again, but again the angle was wrong. On the third attempt, he still could not get positioned correctly. Frustrated but disciplined, Shannon pulled away to let another aircraft try. Flight Lieutenant Maudsley took over the attack. He made several approaches trying to line up the difficult shot. On one run he released his bomb, but the timing was wrong. The bomb struck the top of the dam wall and exploded prematurely. Maudsley's aircraft was caught in the blast. Severely damaged, the Lancaster struggled away from the target. Later, on the return flight, the damaged aircraft was shot down. All crew members were killed. Shannon tried again, now with greater understanding of the approach. On his fourth attempt, everything came together. His bomb was released perfectly, bounced across the reservoir, and struck the dam. The explosion was massive, but the dam held. Flight Lieutenant Knight made the next attack. He navigated the treacherous approach with skill. His bomb was released at the correct point. It bounced perfectly and struck the Eder Dam. The explosion came, and this time the dam broke. Like the Muna, the Eder Dam cracked and collapsed. Another massive flood surged down the valley. Gibson radioed the success code "Dinghy." 2 major dams destroyed in one night. Meanwhile, the second wave of aircraft was attacking the Sorpe Dam. This dam was different in construction from the Muna and Eder. It was an earth dam, made of compacted earth rather than concrete. The bouncing bomb technique would not work against this type of structure. Instead, the bombs had to be dropped directly onto the dam crest. Flight Lieutenant McCarthy reached the Sorpe Dam. He made multiple bombing runs trying to hit the narrow earth dam. On his 10th attempt, he released his bomb. It struck the dam crest and exploded, causing significant damage, but the Sorpe Dam did not break. Other aircraft from the second and third waves also attacked the Sorpe. But none of the attacks succeeded in breaching this stubborn structure. As dawn approached, the surviving aircraft turned for home. They flew low across Germany and occupied Europe. German defenses were now fully alert. More aircraft were lost to flak and fighters on the return journey. Of the 19 Lancasters that took off, only 11 returned. 8 aircraft were lost, with 53 aircrew killed and 3 captured. The cost was heavy, but the results were dramatic. The Muna and Eder dams had been breached. Hundreds of millions of gallons of water were flooding the Ruhr Valley. The destruction was immense. The flood wave from the Muna Dam roared down the Ruhr Valley. It was 30 feet high in places, moving at tremendous speed. Everything in its path was swept away. Factories, bridges, roads, and railways were destroyed. Power stations were flooded and knocked out of operation. Coal mines filled with water. Agricultural land was inundated, destroying crops. Towns and villages in the valley were devastated. The human cost was significant. Over 1,000 people were killed in the flooding. Many were forced laborers and prisoners of war working in German factories. The Eder Dam flood caused similar destruction to the east. Towns along the Eder and Fulda rivers were inundated. The city of Kassel, A major industrial center was partially flooded. The floods continued for days as the reservoirs emptied. The Germans mobilized thousands of workers to deal with the disaster. Rescue operations recovered bodies and searched for survivors. Repairs began immediately on damaged infrastructure. The Germans worked with remarkable efficiency to restore services. But the damage was severe and long-lasting. Industrial production in the Ruhr was significantly disrupted. Steel production fell by 20% in the immediate aftermath. Coal mining was severely affected by flooding. Hydroelectric power generation was lost. Water supplies for industrial processes were interrupted. The Germans diverted huge resources to repair the dams and restore water supplies. Thousands of workers were pulled from other projects. This slowed other German military production efforts. In Britain, news of the raid's success created enormous excitement. The British public had endured years of war with few clear victories. The Dambusters raid was a spectacular success that boosted morale tremendously. Newspapers carried dramatic accounts of the raid. Photographs showed the breached dams and flooded valleys. The story of the bouncing bomb captured public imagination. Barnes Wallis became a national hero. Guy Gibson and his crews were celebrated across the nation. Gibson was awarded the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military honor. 33 other crew members received medals for gallantry. 617 Squadron became famous as the Dambusters. But the celebration was tempered by the losses. 53 brave airmen had died in the operation. Each was remembered for their sacrifice. Guy Gibson himself would not survive the war. In September 1944, he was killed when his aircraft crashed in Holland. He was just 26 years old. The strategic impact of the Dambusters raid has been debated by historians. Some argue the raid had limited long-term military impact. The Germans repaired the dams relatively quickly. The Möhne Dam was rebuilt and operational again within months. Industrial production in the Ruhr recovered faster than expected. The disruption, while significant, was not permanently crippling. Others argue the raid's impact was substantial. The diversion of German resources to repair the dams weakened other efforts. The disruption to production came at a critical time in the war. The psychological impact on German morale was significant, and the boost to British morale was invaluable. The raid demonstrated that precision attacks on strategic targets were possible. This influenced future bombing strategy and tactics. Perhaps most importantly, the raid showed what could be achieved through innovation. Barnes Wallis's bouncing bomb was a revolutionary weapon. It solved a problem that had seemed insurmountable. The combination of scientific ingenuity and military courage produced remarkable results. After the Dambusters raid, Wallis continued developing innovative weapons. He designed the Tallboy bomb, a 12,000-pound deep penetration weapon. The Tallboy was used to destroy hardened targets like submarine pens and viaducts. He also developed the Grand Slam, a 22,000-pound bomb. These weapons were used effectively in the final years of the war. Wallis's work demonstrated the importance of scientific research in warfare. After the war, Wallis continued his engineering career. He worked on supersonic aircraft and other advanced projects. He was knighted in 1968 for his contributions to aviation. He lived until 1979, dying at the age of 92. Throughout his long life, he remained modest about his achievements. He saw the bouncing bomb as simply solving an engineering problem. But his innovation had changed the course of history. 617 Squadron continued operations throughout the war. After the Dambusters raid, they became a specialist precision bombing unit. They conducted numerous difficult missions against strategic targets. The squadron attacked V-weapon sites, submarine pens, and battleships. They sank the German battleship Tirpitz using Tallboy bombs. They destroyed viaducts, tunnels, and other hardened targets. The squadron's motto was, "Après moi le déluge," after me, the flood. This referred to the Dambusters raid and became their enduring identity. After the war, 617 Squadron remained active in the RAF. They transitioned through various aircraft types over the decades. They flew Cambras, Vulcans, Tornadoes, and eventually Typhoons. The squadron maintains the traditions and legacy of the Dambusters. They remain one of the RAF's premier squadrons today. The story of the Dambusters has been told many times in various forms. In 1955, the film The Dambusters brought the story to millions. The film was remarkably accurate and became a classic of British cinema. Its musical score, composed by Eric Coates, became iconic. The Dambusters March is still played at ceremonial events. Books, documentaries, and exhibitions have explored every aspect of the raid. The story has been analyzed from technical, military, and human perspectives. Each retelling reveals new details and insights. The engineering principles behind the bouncing bomb remain fascinating. The weapon exploited the physics of spinning objects and water surfaces. The backspin created lift, keeping the bomb from diving underwater prematurely. The cylindrical shape bounced predictably when striking water at the correct angle. Each bounce dissipated energy, slowing the bomb. After several bounces, the bomb had lost enough speed to sink. The hydrostatic fuse ensured detonation at the optimum depth. Modern engineers continue to study Wallis's design. Computer simulations have confirmed the accuracy of his calculations. His work was done without computers, using only mathematics and intuition. This makes his achievement even more impressive. The operational challenges of the raid were equally remarkable. Flying a 4-engine bomber at 60 feet altitude requires extraordinary skill. At that height, there is no margin for error. Any mistake would send the aircraft crashing into the ground or water. Navigation at low level was extremely difficult. Landmarks passed by quickly, and identifying them required constant attention. At night, with only moonlight for illumination, the challenge multiplied. The crews had to maintain precise speed and altitude while under fire. German flak created a terrifying environment. Tracer rounds and exploding shells filled the air around the aircraft. The sound of fragments hitting the fuselage was constant and nerve-wracking. Yet the crews maintained their discipline and focus. They executed their bombing runs with precision despite the danger. This level of professionalism under extreme stress is remarkable. The selection and training of the crews was crucial to success. Gibson handpicked experienced airmen from across Bomber Command. These were not novices, but veterans with proven skills. The training program was intensive and focused. They practiced the specific skills needed for this unique mission: low-level flying, precise navigation, accurate bomb aiming. By the time of the raid, they were as prepared as humanly possible. The leadership of Guy Gibson was essential. At just 24, he commanded respect through his skill and courage. He led from the front, making the first attack on the Moon Adam. He deliberately drew fire to protect other aircraft making their runs. His calm radio communications helped coordinate the complex operation. He inspired confidence and determination in his crews. This type of leadership cannot be taught, but it can be developed. Gibson's example remains relevant for military leaders today. The ethical dimensions of the raid deserve consideration. The flooding caused significant civilian casualties. Over 1,000 people died, many of them civilians or forced laborers. The destruction of infrastructure affected civilian populations. In the context of total war, such actions were considered militarily necessary. The dams were legitimate strategic targets supporting the German war effort. But the human cost was real and significant. Modern international law and ethics of warfare continue to grapple with such issues. The line between military and civilian targets is often blurred. The principle of proportionality requires weighing military advantage against civilian harm. These remain challenging questions without easy answers. The Dambusters raid also represents a turning point in precision bombing. Before this raid, strategic bombing relied on area attacks. Large numbers of aircraft would bomb general target areas. Accuracy was poor, and many bombs fell far from intended targets. The Dambusters raid demonstrated that precisely planned attacks could destroy specific targets. This influenced the development of precision bombing techniques. Later in the war, more emphasis was placed on accurate attacks. Specialized squadrons like 617 conducted precision missions. This evolution continued after the war. Modern precision-guided munitions are the descendants of Wallis's approach. Today's smart bombs can hit targets with incredible accuracy. The principle remains the same. Identify a critical target and destroy it precisely. The technology has advanced, but the concept originated with innovations like the bouncing bomb. The legacy of the bouncing bomb extends beyond military applications. Wallis's approach to problem-solving has influenced engineers worldwide. He demonstrated the value of fundamental physics in solving practical problems. He showed that unconventional approaches can succeed where traditional methods fail. His willingness to challenge assumptions inspired others to think creatively. The Dambusters story has also become part of British cultural identity. It represents ingenuity, courage, and determination in the face of adversity. These qualities resonate with how Britain sees itself. the story of ordinary people achieving extraordinary things through teamwork. This narrative has powerful appeal across generations. Memorials and museums preserve the memory of the Dambusters. At RAF Scampton, where 617 Squadron was based, there are extensive exhibits. The Ruhr Valley Museum in Derbyshire tells the story of the local impact. In Germany, the rebuilt dams stand as monuments to both destruction and reconstruction. Plaques commemorate those who died in the floods. The memory of the raid is preserved from multiple perspectives. Survivors from both sides have shared their memories over the years. These personal accounts add depth to the historical record. They remind us that history is made by real people with hopes and fears. The technical artifacts from the raid are carefully preserved. A practice bouncing bomb is displayed at the Imperial War Museum. Fragments of aircraft and equipment are held in various collections. These physical objects connect us to the events of that night in 1943. In recent years, new details about the raid have emerged. Declassified documents have revealed additional information. Archaeological surveys of the crash sites have uncovered artifacts. Detailed analysis of the bomb's physics has been conducted using modern technology. These investigations continue to shed light on this remarkable operation. The bouncing bomb principle has been studied for potential modern applications. While the specific weapon is obsolete, the underlying physics remains relevant. Understanding how objects interact with water surfaces has many uses. From torpedo design to recreational skip bombing demonstrations, Wallis's work contributed to broader understanding of fluid dynamics. The human stories from the Dambusters raid are endlessly compelling. Each of the 133 men who participated had a unique story. Some were career military, others were wartime volunteers. They came from Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other Commonwealth nations. Their diverse backgrounds united in common purpose. The 53 who died represented tremendous loss of skill and potential. Many were in their early 20s at the beginning of their adult lives. They sacrificed everything for their cause. The survivors carried memories of the raid throughout their lives. Some spoke openly about their experiences. Others found it difficult to discuss the trauma and loss. All were marked by their participation in this historic event. As the last veterans have passed away, their stories have been carefully recorded. Interviews, memoirs, and letters preserve their voices. These primary sources are invaluable for understanding the human dimension. Beyond the tactics and technology, the raid was about people. The Dambusters raid influenced popular culture in numerous ways. The 1955 film created iconic imagery that persists today. The sight of Lancasters flying low over water became synonymous with the raid. The dramatic scenes of the bombs bouncing captured imaginations worldwide. The film's influence extended beyond entertainment. It educated generations about this aspect of World War II history. Many people's understanding of the raid comes from the film. While generally accurate, the film did take some dramatic liberties. Subsequent documentaries and analyses have provided more detailed accounts. The balance between entertainment and education is always challenging. The Dambusters March became one of the most recognized military marches. Its stirring melody evokes British patriotism and wartime determination. The music is played at military ceremonies and commemorative events. It has become inseparable from the story of the raid itself. Books about the Dambusters range from technical analyses to personal memoirs. Paul Brickhill's original 1951 book introduced the story to mass audiences. More recent works have provided deeper analysis using newly available sources. Each generation discovers the story anew through these retellings. The raid has been commemorated through stamps, coins, and other memorabilia. These items reflect the enduring public interest in the story. Collectors preserve artifacts and documents related to the raid. This grassroots preservation complements official museum collections. The strategic lessons from the Dambusters raid remain relevant. Identifying and attacking critical nodes in enemy infrastructure can have disproportionate effects. Modern military planners still focus on key targets whose destruction creates cascading impacts. Power grids, communication networks, and transportation hubs are modern equivalents. The principle of precision targeting to maximize effect while minimizing resources continues. Innovation in weapons and tactics can overcome seemingly insurmountable defenses. The bouncing bomb succeeded because it approached the problem differently. Modern military forces invest heavily in innovative technologies for similar reasons. Training and preparation are essential for complex operations. The Dambusters succeeded because they practiced extensively. Modern special operations forces follow similar training philosophies. Leadership at the tactical level can make or break an operation. Gibson's leadership was crucial to coordinating the attack under fire. Modern militaries emphasize developing leaders at all levels. These timeless principles transcend specific technologies or tactics. Comparing the Dambusters raid to other famous World War II operations is instructive. The Doolittle raid on Tokyo in 1942 was similarly audacious and morale-boosting. Both raids achieved strategic surprise and psychological impact. The raid on Peenemünde targeted German rocket research facilities. Like the Dambusters, it aimed to disrupt critical enemy programs. The sinking of the Tirpitz by 617 Squadron using tallboy bombs. This showed the same precision bombing principles applied to different targets. Each operation demonstrated different aspects of strategic bombing. The Dambusters raid stands out for its combination of innovation and execution. Few operations required such a novel weapon and such demanding flying. The global interest in the Dambusters story reflects universal themes. The underdog overcoming obstacles through cleverness and courage. The scientist whose brilliant idea changes the course of events. The brave warriors who risk everything for their comrades and cause. These archetypal narratives resonate across cultures and time periods. The story combines technical fascination with human drama. The bouncing bomb is inherently interesting from an engineering perspective. The personalities involved add emotional depth to the technical achievement. This combination makes for compelling storytelling. In education, the Dambusters story is used to teach multiple subjects. Physics classes analyze the bouncing bomb's mechanics. History classes examine the raid's context and impact. Engineering courses study Wallis's problem-solving approach. Leadership seminars use Gibson's example to illustrate principles. The multifaceted nature of the story provides rich educational material. The environmental aspects of the raid are worth considering. The floods caused significant ecological damage to the affected valleys. Rivers and ecosystems were disrupted by the sudden surge of water. Agricultural land was damaged by flooding and silt deposition. Recovery of the natural environment took years after the war. Today, the areas have recovered, but the environmental impact was real. Modern warfare considerations include environmental consequences. The Dambusters raid occurred before such concerns were widely recognized. The technological evolution since the Dambusters raid has been dramatic. From simple spinning bombs to precision-guided munitions. From visual navigation to GPS-guided systems. From analog instruments to digital flight controls. Yet the fundamental challenge remains: delivering weapons accurately to targets. Technology changes, but the core mission continues. The courage required has not changed. Flying into danger still demands bravery regardless of technology. Modern aircrew study the Dambusters as an example of mission execution. The principles of planning, preparation, and performance remain constant. As we approach the conclusion of this account, several themes emerge. The power of innovation to solve difficult problems. Barnes Wallis demonstrated that creative thinking can overcome obstacles. The importance of courage and skill in executing complex operations. The Dambusters crews showed what trained professionals can achieve. The role of leadership in coordinating and inspiring people. Guy Gibson exemplified leadership under extreme pressure. The human cost of warfare, even in successful operations. 53 airmen and over 1,000 others died as a result of the raid. The lasting impact of historical events on collective memory. The Dambusters raid continues to resonate 80 years later. The bouncing bomb represents a unique moment in military history. It was used operationally only once on that May night in 1943. The specific combination of circumstances that made it effective never recurred. Yet its legacy extends far beyond that single operation. It demonstrated the value of thinking differently about military problems. It showed that precision could be as effective as mass. It proved that innovative technology combined with human skill could achieve remarkable results. The story of the Dambusters has been passed down through generations. Veterans told their children and grandchildren about the raid. Schools taught the story as part of World War II history. Films and books kept the narrative alive in popular culture. Museums preserved artifacts and documents for future generations. This collective memory keeping ensures the story endures. The technical achievement of the bouncing bomb deserves final recognition. In just 3 months, Wallis transformed a concept into a working weapon. He conducted tests, refined the design, and produced operational weapons. This rapid development cycle would be impressive even with modern technology. That he achieved it in 1943 with wartime constraints is extraordinary. The operational achievement was equally impressive. 19 crews flew deep into enemy territory at extremely low altitude. They found their targets, executed precise attacks under fire. They destroyed 2 major dams and damaged a third. 11 aircraft returned safely despite fierce opposition. By any measure, it was a successful and historic operation. The Dambusters raid exemplifies the best of human capability, scientific brilliance solving seemingly impossible problems, engineering excellence creating revolutionary technology, military professionalism executing complex operations, personal courage facing danger for a greater cause. These qualities represent humanity at its finest. As we remember the Dambusters, we honor both achievement and sacrifice. The brilliant mind of Barnes Wallis who conceived the weapon, the brave crews who flew the mission into danger, the 53 who gave their lives that night, and all those affected by the raid on all sides. The bouncing bomb and the Dambusters raid remain iconic symbols. They represent innovation, courage, and determination. They remind us what can be achieved when brilliant minds and brave hearts work together. The story continues to inspire new generations. Engineers study the technical innovation. Military professionals analyze the tactical execution. Historians examine the strategic impact. And the public remains fascinated by this extraordinary story. This is the legacy of the bouncing bomb and the Dambusters raid. A story of ingenuity, bravery, and sacrifice that will never be forgotten. May we always remember their courage and their remarkable achievement.